All right, we're going to call this meeting to order, the April 30th meeting of the Downtown Park Task Force at 6:03 this evening. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the April 15th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion for their approval?
So moved.
Motion by Tim.
Support.
Second by Commissioner Dubak. Any discussion, any corrections, any questions? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the minutes stand approved. Item number 3 on our agenda is City Commission comments. Obviously, all of us who are city commissioners will have comments on the various proposals later on in the agenda, but is there anything else that any commissioner would like to add at this point in the agenda? No? All right. Seeing that none, then we will move on to public comments. If there are members of the public that want to give comments to the task force this evening, you may come up to the podium and identify yourself with name and address. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. There is a timer at the podium. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak this evening? Seeing no one, we will close that section of the agenda. And we move on to item number 5, which is the business at hand. It's been broken down into A and B, discussion on the presentations from April 15th, and then recommendations to bring forth to the City Commission. I have a feeling that's all going to merge into one big discussion topic, so we're not necessarily going to strictly stick to the A and then the B. There's a couple of different ways that we could handle this evening. Obviously, we're going to want to hear input of some kind or another from all members of the task force so that we can make a final decision this evening on our recommendation for the designer for the downtown park. The decision does not have to be unanimous, so I think that there should be vigorous discussion if there's disagreement about the various options that we have in front of us. No one should be afraid to hold back in terms of their opinions based on what they saw and what they've analyzed and what they feel about the whole thing. In terms of moving forward, we could do a couple of different things. We have 5 presentations in front of us. We could take, for example, we could do a straw vote initially, just to kind of see if there is perhaps a unanimous consensus on a designer or not. Or it might indicate to us there is wide disparity in our viewpoints, which would mean we would have to go to Plan B. The other thing that I had thought of might be a good way to open up the discussion is to allow each member of the task force to just have some initial comments and perhaps indicate what their first top 2 preferences are in terms of the landscape or the architects that have presented proposals, or perhaps all 5. Perhaps you've ranked them all and you'd like to discuss that and explain why. Or perhaps you would just like to say, well, my top 2 picks are A and B. It's entirely up to the task force. I don't know if anyone here has any preferences as to how we handle this, but I have a feeling it's no matter what we do, it's going to dissolve into a pretty wide-ranging discussion of the various proposals. So, does anyone have any preferences as to how we handle this?
I like the last option you gave. I thought was good. It kind of cuts to the chase a little bit, I guess, right?
So top 2? Is that
Top
your
2
recommendation?
or 3, I guess,
Okay.
and then,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, whatever else thinks, but.
It gives us an idea of where to focus our attention, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, if we're close on the top 3 and it just becomes minute points of, or if we all have different top 3s, see
Then-
what bubbles up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
There might be one that we all agree on, that we could talk through a little bit more about why it was my 3 and his 1 or something.
Right.
Or your 1.
Okay, Commissioner DeBuck?
Yeah, so maybe we should just share very brief comments and say what our top 2 are, and we see if there's broad consensus, so we can go from there.
Okay. Top 2 or top 3?
I guess you can offer 3 if you feel strongly about 3, but I'm comfortable with 2.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
Okay.
Is that a plan?
Yep.
Okay. Starting then from left to right. I'm going to start with Sarah.
Okay, my top 2 were Smith and MKSK. I felt like they brought a lot of different options. I like their international presence. I feel like they did a good job of figuring out when we would need community engagement, and I like the diversity of their teams.
Okay. Okay. Tim?
My top two are the same in opposite order. My number one is MKSK and number two is Smith Group.
So I would say that Smith was, Smith was my big vote getter. I just don't think they're $100,000 better than the next firm. More than $100,000 more than the next closest bid. And for that, even though I like obviously they were my top score getter, I just don't think it's worth it. So my two top choices are Hamilton Anderson and PEA. Just to throw a curveball there.
Okay. I'm going to skip me for now. Frank?
So my top two choices were MKS number one and Smith Group number two, and all for all the reasons that Sarah pointed out. And additionally, in terms of the examples that were presented both last week or a few weeks ago and in their proposals, I thought the MKS firm had many projects of a similar scale, as well as it seemed those projects were very sensitive to their surroundings. They had a very high-quality feel in terms of how they dealt with the public. They showed images with people using the parks in sort of wonderful ways. So actually, MKS came out pretty significantly high on my list.
Commissioner DeBeck?
Yeah, this is interesting. So, on top of, the formal analysis, and just kind of looking at pricing, I think we've got a really good group of bids here. So, I was really pleased with the field overall, right? But then trying to parse out between, so who's the right fit? I was kind of looking at what are the comparables that they brought forward? Because we're in such a limited space here. Some of them kind of showed like these really grandiose ideas. I'm like, that's beautiful, but I don't know what that has to do with this particular project. So when they really showed things that they themselves had done that were very similar, that meant a lot to me. And then, they all kind of mentioned about authentic Royal Oak, but some of them actually provided a vision and context for what that meant for them as a team, and so that meant a lot to me too. So looking at that and a couple other things, my top two were MKSK and Hamilton Anderson.
Okay,
Mr. Vanston?
all right, well, I'll just tell you my top two were MKSK and Smith Group. And I went back and forth a lot, and I went back and looked at everything, and we had some external input, which was valuable as well. All of you that chose MKSK kind of took my thunder away, but I did, the very least what I looked at was the dollars. And I only looked at those if it looked like two firms were going to be close. But I felt very strongly that MKSK did the best job of presenting something that seemed to make sense in this for this particular project. So like I said, MKSK 1, Smith Group 2.
Okay. I also picked MKSK and Smith Group. I also looked not so much at the numbers because there was a great deal of similarity. There was not a huge amount of price disparity among any of these five. Once the contract is actually underway and we're negotiating the contract, a lot of those numbers are going to get jiggled a little bit. So, to at this point in time, parse the numbers really I didn't think was appropriate because that's going to change a little bit because they're all in the same ballpark. I liked MKSK for the same reasons that the others that have identified them as their top choice. Their seeming understanding of what our mission is in this particular project. Their understanding of the city and kind of where we are in terms of this overall city center project and our downtown. The Smith Group also, I was impressed with. This probably is not something that it should be at the top of our reasoning process, I was impressed by the fact that almost their entire team that was here were women. I find that to be in the engineering design field, that's unusual. And granted, we can't have a preference, but to the extent that we can support women-owned businesses in this type of project, I thought that was important. The other thing that impressed me, and this is totally, totally subjective, is their team stayed for the entire process. All the other teams, some stayed a little bit longer after their presentation. Obviously, some were later than others, but they stayed and listened to every single presentation. I thought that was very impressive. I think they came here not only to present, but also to learn. And I'm sure they learned a lot from the other presenters, not only about their work and what's possible here, but also what they could carry into other projects and so on and so forth. And I thought that indication that they were willing us to sit and learn for 2.5 hours was quite impressive. So for those reasons, those are the two that identified as my top two. That leaves us, if I'm going to add these up correctly here, and math is not my strong point, we have MKSK. We have, of the 7 of us, MKSK is the top vote getter for 1, 2, 3, 4, for 5 of us. And Smith Group is the second place for 4 of us. So that, to my mind, pretty much narrows it down.
You didn't count somebody's vote.
Excuse me?
I don't think you counted somebody's vote.
Did I not count someone's vote?
Shar didn't,
Yourself?
Shar didn't go, Shar
Sure, I
went
didn't
with
vote for either one of
Hamilton.
those two.
Shar went with Hamilton and PEA, and I had Smith as number 1 and MKSK as number 2. Marginally, I think that wasn't, so.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Does that compute now?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us down then to a fairly strong showing for MKSK. Do we want to discuss these individual proposals more, particularly Commissioner Douglas?
Yes. So here are like the two things that influenced a lot of my scoring were, one, I wanted a firm where the project manager was an architect, not an engineer. And so both of these fill that criterion. But also, I was also looking for a firm that was basically going to go straight to design, to conceptuals. We have done a ton of community engagement. I mean, they have copious amounts of material to work from. And right now, I'm looking for park designers. I'm looking for that creativity, for that thing that even we don't think about and that lay people don't think about either. And of these two, Smith Group made it clear that they're pretty much going to go straight to design, and their community engagement is, after the fact, is in listening to people's reaction to their designs. So even though maybe they didn't get the total votes here at the table, if I were, going to now weigh in on the two strongest candidates, Smith Group would absolutely get my vote.
I would say that MKS also expressed that opinion. Additionally, I think the top designer in their team is a landscape architect, which is opposed to an architect, and I think a landscape architect is probably more appropriate in terms of leading the team. I would also like to say, just before we continue, that and I know and have professional association with 4 of the 5 teams here, of which I don't know anybody on the MKS team, and that was my number 1 pick. So I'm going to get chip from everybody.
I think when I was looking through Smith Group, when I was looking through the look and feel, the one with the 2 levels that everybody, like an 82% liked, that designer is at Smith Group.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably part of what swayed me, was that they have that designer on staff now and on this project, knowing that our community expressed such a high interest in some of their design elements that were used in the look and feel. So I also agree with you, the diversity of the team was important to me and probably some of the closer experience to being out of school too. So I'm at 20 or 30 years may not feel as to me is maybe they don't have the same experiences.
Any other comments? Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I guess if we're looking at those two, one of the things that I looked closely at and listened for in their presentation was how strong a vision they had for environmental elements that can be worked into the park. And I thought that MKSK was far and away had the most experience with environmental design and working environmental concepts into the park design. And they put it front and center in their presentation as something that they thought was a priority, which is absolutely a priority for me. So for that reason, all things being equal, I would lean towards them.
Were they the ones that talked about using parts of the building or something?
And
Basement.
Yeah,
Basement,
and
okay,
finding a
I
way
was just trying to remember.
yeah.
Thank you.
KSK.
Water runoff, yeah.
Super piqued my interest. I'm like, wait, what?
I was there. I think we should use some of the tile as well.
I think they're talking about just using the hole.
Yes, I know.
Just, yeah, the excavation. Yeah, they're not going to be able to use the concrete. It used to be a bomb shelter. I don't know if everybody knew that. There used to be a huge, they had a big civil defense sign. It was, in the 50s, it was a bomb shelter during the Cold War. It was, one of those places where you could go if there was an air raid. That's probably been gone for decades. I'm really dating myself now.
Maybe we should have a time capsule. Like, maybe this is our time to have a time capsule in the park.
They were a firm, according to my notes, that relied, at least in some of their thinking, about the historical photo of the original park that was here on the site. I thought that was appropriate that they'd gone back and done that kind of research. And also the Royal Oak tree and the fact that, trees and our history of our dedication to trees and Arbor Day and so on it was fairly significant. Their team also are excellent people, and we have a good working relationship with their engineering people, Fleiss and Vanderbeek, which is a plus as well. They've done great work for us, although many of the people on these various teams have also done great work for us, but Fleiss and Vanderbeek have been exceptional.
One thing I liked about MKSK, I do remember specifically, was they had a day in the park concept. One of their ways of doing community engagement was to have some day in the park concept to kind of, I think, show that vision a little bit different than just holding up signs and things like that. I got, giving them the feel of what the park would be like to get their reactions. I thought that was a unique way to engage with the community.
My notes also suggest, and I used handwritten notes because I find that a lot more effective than dealing with a lot of data that sometimes is a little overwhelming to process, at least for me, is that one of the things that they were going to do in terms of their public engagement process was put forward 3 design concepts and then get public engagement in reaction to those. So I'm not sure exactly how much additional public engagement they will do beyond what we've already done before they go to that initial design phase. They didn't really indicate that. But certainly if we were to select them, I think we could indicate that, on a going forward basis, we really don't want 6 months more of public engagement, perhaps just with the stakeholders and some key stakeholders, but then, let's get right to the preliminary design work. I think we can kind of direct that process.
I think they were pretty clear about that. They were clear that that's the way they would operate, I think, at least what I heard anyhow.
I think both of them are much more focused on community engagement after design of the 2 that we've selected versus the other 2 that felt like they were going to go through it again. And I didn't see where the community engagement was going to come in after the design process as much, except for the 2 that we are talking about.
I didn't get it, I didn't get that sense. I mean, reading through it, and I was specifically looking for firms that were gonna go straight to design. I mean, every firm needs, to get their sense of the community, and I understand they need a little engagement, but I'm really looking for a firm that's, like I say, is gonna go straight to design and start talking about concepts.
And I think that's an important point. We can direct that in the contract,
Yes.
right? In the final details of the contract, that's how we'd like them to approach this, that we've got tons of information for them to start from, to start drafting a concept for people to then respond to that concept. That could be, no matter who we go with, we could say that's how we want it done, right?
It seems like we should be able to have, all of them have talked extensively about having meetings with this group and the city and some key stakeholders, so before they even got through the design process. So it seems like we should be able to have that input.
And it's a rolling process,
Sure.
meetings, designing, tweaking, and so on and so forth. That's how I envision it. Also, we have to keep in mind that irrespective of what they have suggested in terms of their time frame for public engagement, we don't want to necessarily stall this project. But on the other hand, we have to keep in mind that granted, this building is going to be standing for a little while longer, as is the police station, but there are other design elements in this area that link into it that are not necessarily on hold, but they're waiting for us, and they're waiting for a design concept to emerge so that they can progress. So we don't want to drag this out through months and months of public engagement again, and delaying those aspects of the project. So it's important for us to keep that in mind as well, especially if whoever is chosen, they come back to us and we start directing them in terms of what we want them to do first, move on right away. Any other comments?
One of the things I found interesting about MKSK, actually really enjoyed, was their concept of a healing ceremony.
Of a what survey?
Healing ceremony.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty divisive, things that are happening. I mean, people either love the development or they hate it. And I think this healing ceremony that they touched on would really probably be a great thing to bring everything together. Hey, look what we did. We did this great park, and this is not terrible anymore. And I mean, I just wrote it down, and their tree ring design I really enjoyed.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, are you ready to actually make a decision? Is someone ready to make a motion?
I make a motion
Okay.
to
I'll second
recommend MKSK.
I'll second it.
as our
We have a
Number
motion
one.
to select MKSK and a support. Any discussion? Mr. Dunstan?
Hey, I just want to say that I think any of these 5 firms would have given us a good park. But I think the 2 we drew it down to, it looks like we drew it down to, and the one we selected are going to really give us a great park, so that's it.
Any other discussion? Mr. DeBuck?
Yeah, to echo that, they were all very well thought out proposals, and we're kind of like, at this point, splitting hairs just to find like who's got that little extra thing. But I was really pleased with the response and the quality of the responses we got. And I think we could continue to discuss it, but given that just having gone through it each with our own individual processes, landing with a strong majority on this bidder, it seems like that's where we'll end up anyway, unless someone's got a really strong case to make to consider another candidate.
Yeah, I won't be, I favor Smith Group, so I'm not going to support the motion and just see how things go.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? Well, first of all, we want to thank all 5 presenters. They were all impressive. We're so honored that you chose to put the time and the energy into these proposals, and we're forever grateful for that. You're all talented people, you will all do wonderful things, and we're just thrilled that you're in our community. And maybe perhaps sometime in the future, those of you who aren't selected will have another opportunity to present here in Royal Oak. There's a lot going on, there will be a lot of things going on in the future. So if you are not selected this evening, don't forget about us. Keep us in mind for future projects, because inevitably there will be more going on. We have 52 parks, and this is just going to be 53. So there will be other projects going on even in other parks probably at some point. But thank you for all 5 of you for putting in the time and the energy and the money and the hours into these proposals. We're very honored that you chose us and were interested in submitting a proposal. We can't thank you enough. And unfortunately, we can't choose all 5, and we can't choose even the top 2. We have to pick one. And it sounds like MKSK is going to be our choice this evening. So without any further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No?
The motion passes with 1 dissent, and that completes the vote on the selection of the park designer. Are there any other items to come before the task force tonight? Commissioner Douglas?
So we The score sheets that we got, that the staff gave us, were, I don't know when they were created, but we, as a committee, should have designed these scoring sheets. I mean, this is kind of a boilerplate that I think staff uses, and there were criteria that I think are important that weren't really part of the quantitative evaluation. I mean, many times purchasing, I mean, you go out for proposals and it's a pretty cut and dried process, but in in places where you've got a committee or task force that's deeply engaged in the selection, I would say to staff, and I've said this to the city manager, that the first step in the process before we even start writing an RFP is that we write the criteria and decide on the scoring methods in advance.
Commissioner DeBuck.
Just curious about next steps from here.
Perhaps we should hear from staff at this point as to how they envision this process going forward, and then we can comment on that.
I'll write up a letter of recommendation summarizing the discussion tonight, and it'll come before the city commission for approval, hopefully at the May 13th meeting. Once we do that, we'll get a contract in place with the whoever's approved by the commission. And then I envision there'll be a meeting with this group and all the other groups involved in the downtown project and lay out the ground rules as far as scope and definitively define the boundaries of what the park is and ground rules such as where we stand with the Star Dream and the War Memorial and that kind of thing, so they don't spend a lot of time designing three proposals and the War Memorial when we know that cost is a factor and that's not going to fly, may or may not fly for a lot of various reasons.
Obviously, there will be a contract involved with this. Do you anticipate having a contract before the city commission on the 13th, or just?
Just the approval to go forward with the contract.
Okay, so approval of the selection of this company and then direct the staff to go forward and develop a contract?
Contract, that's correct.
Okay. And the contract should have input from this group as to, scope and timing and so on, or no?
I didn't do that with Normandy Oaks, but we can.
Okay. Commissioner Douglas.
Well, the issue that you heard us talk about here today, the feeling that we're not looking for a ton of initial community engagement.
That will be definitely relayed.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that will definitely be relayed, that we're not looking to spend.
Okay.
We're looking to go straight to design, and we'll make sure that point is made clear to them.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Any
I mean,
other-
the next group meeting, I would like to, we may have a meeting before that, but I would think that there will be a meeting with this task force, once the conceptual designs are done, so that we can go over with those and get your feedback and as far as on the designs and where we're going as far as what we like. Because as you said, they're going to come up with 3 designs, and it'll be a mixture of those 3 that probably is the final product.
Mm-hmm.
But there would be a kickoff meeting, right, initially,
Yes.
to discuss
Yes.
ideas and all these things. Yeah.
Any other, the staff is in the process thinking about contract issues. Are there any other contract issues that this group can think of that they would like at least the staff to start thinking about or evolving into the contract?
Yes. I
Commissioner
think
Douglas.
one of the comments that was made in the staff's evaluation of the proposals was travel expenses, a little concern that because this is an out-of-town firm, who knows what kind of mileage and hotels we're going to be looking at. So I think, when you look at the contract, you're going to need to nail them down on that, too.
They have a Detroit office, though.
Yeah, but I got the sense that, he said, I'm in Detroit all the time. Well, if you're coming to, who's paying your mileage? Us or another client?
Right. I don't know.
Okay, we'll need to nail that down.
Okay.
And in other incidental expenses that perhaps we may not be aware of, whatever they might be, they're not necessarily delineated in their proposal, because sometimes those have a tendency to creep up. Any other questions for staff?
I just want to thank you guys, because we didn't make this decision for lack of information. So,
Thank you.
every time I thought I had everything together, and John would send another email and say, oh, there's more stuff, okay. But
I'd also like
thank
to
you very
say that,
much.
even though the framework started out as something generic, I thought it was very useful, and this document was helped in terms of ranking each proposal. So, thank you for that, too.
Yes, any other questions for staff? Thank you also on behalf of the
No
whole
problem.
group. We appreciate all your efforts. Okay, any other items not on the agenda? It is 6:35.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Go us.
It is a record.
Go team.
I did not think everyone was gonna land in the same place. That was cool.
If there is no other business to come before this task force, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas,
Second.
support by Mr. Dunstan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned.